cats and dogs all day. So let's start off tonight's show with a report on the torrential rains affecting several provinces due to the southwest monsoon and Typhoon Karina. Mobile journalist Francis Orsho with the big story for tonight.
Heavy rainfall affected a large portion of Luzon as Typhoon Karina continued to enhance the southwest monsoon or habagat. Here in Metro Manila, several areas were submerged in flood. In Malabon alone, at least 18 roads in the city remain flooded.
Mula Tondo hanggang papuntang Navota sa hospital, tapos mula Navota sa hospital ito, naglalakad, naglulusong.
Over in Navotas, residents on boats once again became common sight as most of the city's streets got inundated. And as before, whenever heavy rains fall hit after the dry season, trash gets forced out of overflowing sewers. Over the provinces, the disaster risk management officials of Cagayan has evacuated close to 100 families from the towns of Peña Blanca, Gonzaga, and Santa Ana. In Bagao, 2 bridges remain unpassable as the river in the town overflowed. Over in Bacoor, Cavite, flood waters also shut down several segments of the Aguinaldo Highway.
Simula to kahapon, bandang mga alas 4 ganun, malakas na talaga yung tubig ulan. Ngayon, ayan na siya, hanggang ngayong araw. Lalo pa siyang tumaas nung lumakas pa na walang tigil yung ulan.
Aside from Bacoor, the towns of Kawit and Noveleta and low-lying areas in General Trias and Imus are under flood alert. In Kalumpit, Bulacan, flood waters went as high as 2-story houses. The LGU is now calling on the national government for help.
Sanay na po talaga kami sa baha dahil catch basin kami. Kaya lang yung paglaki ng high tide, iba na po yung laki ng high tide ngayon. Kaya sana po, nananawagan din kami sa national na maging seryoso yung kanilang master plan na sinasabi.
As the rains continue and flood waters yet to recede, the NDRRMC has confirmed that 8 people have died from the combined effects of the Habagat, Typhoon Butchoy, and Typhoon Karina. Some 180,000 families are also affected. The DSWD has prepositioned relief goods which will be dispatched to affected localities. Mobile journalist Francis Orsho, We Are One News.
And now let's take a look at the latest on Typhoon Karina. The typhoon continues to intensify as it heads north. PAGCOR says Karina will gradually accelerate in the coming days, but is expected to exit the Philippine area of responsibility by Thursday. In the meantime, heavy rainfall is forecast over extreme northern Luzon, particularly in Batanes, the eastern portion of mainland Cagayan, and Ilocos Sur. Gale warning is also in effect over the coastal waters of Batanes, Papuyan Islands, and the northeastern portion of Cagayan. This means sea travel is risky for small sea crafts, and people are being urged not to set sail for the time being. Tropical cyclone wind signal number 2 is still up in Batanes, while areas under signal number 1 are Cagayan, the eastern portion of Isabela, the northern portions of Apayao, and Ilocos Norte.
All right, now moving on to another topic that's not weather-related. President Bongbong Marcos was very, very clear in his third State of the Nation address yesterday that all Philippine offshore gaming operators, or POGOs, are banned immediately. Now, what is not clear for many is whether or not internet gaming licensees, or IGLs, are covered by this ban. The answer in this report by Marian Enriquez.
If President Marcos's directive in his third SONA were the basis, legal POGOs should all be out of the country by December. But ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro wants to know if POGOs and internet gaming licensees, or IGLs, are one and the same. PAGCOR answered in the affirmative. It turns out it's the same operations with different names.
Clarify ko lang, once and for all, kasi kahapon kasi sinabi ni Presidente yung POGO. So, POGO and IGL are the same. Tama?
Yes, ma'am.
Kaya po, pag nagrekomenda kayo kay Presidente, sabi ko nga, mailinaw natin kay Presidente. Baka yung sinasabi nyo kasi, POGO, ibaban, pero dahil binago nyo nga po yung guidelines, yung IGL will remain.
Susunod po ako sa utos ng Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr. At maliwanag po yung utos na yung kagabi.
For the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Task Force, what matters at this point is that POGOs are now banned. PAOK is expecting to meet with other law enforcement agencies to make POGO crackdown actions swift and final. But if it were up to House Ways and Means Chairman Joey Salceda, there should still be a law that supports Marcos Jr.'s order. This way, succeeding administrations cannot overturn the order and allow POGOs in again.
Yes, we can, para it becomes a law. Para it becomes a law. But the President has full powers over PAGCOR. He has he has the executive discretion with respect to the, he can, pag hindi sumunod si Altenco, di tanggalin niya.
At the moment, there are 2 bills and 3 resolutions in the House of Representatives that target the permanent removal of offshore gaming operations in the country. Speaker Martin Romualdez has already asked concerned committees to revisit all these measures and come up with an encompassing substitute bill. Like Salceda, the rest of the House leadership wants this new version to be infallible, as it is meant to become a priority legislation.
I want all bases in the total POGO ban covered in the proposed measures. We have to ensure that the POGO operators will not just resort to guerrilla operators or go undercover. The law must be crafted with ironclad provisions to prevent a resurrection of these criminal and illegal activities.
And while there's already a blanket ban on POGOs, the lower chamber is not dropping its investigation on them. The House of Representatives is still zeroing in on illegal activities associated with POGOs.
Itutuloy namin ito. Bakit? Kasi we must put people or hold people accountable, no? Yung mga nasa likod ng pamamayagpag nitong mga illegal na POGO na ito, dapat managot. Dapat magkaroon ng accountability nang sa ganun ay hindi tutularan, sa aking paniwala.
For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Several government officials and agencies, including PAGCOR, have welcomed President Bongbong Marcos' order to ban POGOs. Ria Fernandez with that story.
Will be judiciously spent.
PAGCOR will follow the order of President Bongbong Marcos to ban POGOs during his State of the Nation address. According to PAGCOR Chairman Alejandro Tenco, they will immediately start the process to meet the President's year-end deadline.
Wala tayong magagawa. Alam nyo, pinag-aralan mabuti ng Pangulo ang sitwasyon at naniniwala ako na ang kanyang desisyon ay isang desisyon na makabubuti hindi lamang sa ilang kundi sa nakararami. Magpapaliwanagan kami ng mga legal na may lisensya na yun. 43 yun.
According to PAGCOR, more than 42,000 Filipinos working in the 43 legal POGOs will lose their jobs. Still, Finance Secretary Ralph Recto expressed his support in banning POGOs. Recto said banning them won't significantly affect the economy because the costs of keeping them far outweigh the benefits. The finance chief added that the government will have to ensure that all displaced Filipino workers will have new jobs. This is also the view of the National Economic Development Authority, or NEDA, as they expect the economic impact of the POGO ban to be minimal.
More important than just the economic numbers, no? I think the social cost and reputational cost of to the country of hosting this kind of businesses is not good at all. Those are very high, and I think that I would like to see, the President would like to see legitimate businesses, businesses that give good reputation to our country as investment destination, as tourist destination, not ones that encourage criminalities or and related negatives.
According to the Labor Department, they have programs ready for Filipinos who will become unemployed. DOLE already has a list of some Filipino POGO workers.
Mga programa na ng DOLE katulad sa employment facilitation, kung ano ang kanilang magiging interest, trabaho ba o negosyo.
Opo.
Kaya naman po ay dagdagan namin ang kanilang kasanayan at kaalaman.
Meanwhile, the senators leading the hearings on illegal activities related to POGOs consider the president's decision a success. According to Senator Risa Ontiveros, the joy and relief of the ban on POGOs in the country is invaluable. Senator Win Gatchalian, on the other hand, is planning to include more provisions in the anti-POGO bill.
Pag-aaralan namin kung online dahil marami din kami access
Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission or PAO, which backed the raid on POGOs, is also pleased with the ban on POGOs. The agency said it will compile a database of foreigners working for POGOs to help in their subsequent deportation. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
Well, suspended Bamban Tarlac Mayor Alice Guo has apologized to Senate President Cheese Escudero after the latter said Guo cannot tell senators what to do. In a letter addressed to the Senate President, Guo apologized if there was any misunderstanding after saying before that some senators seemed to be targeting her. Guo said she had no intention of telling nor dictating to the Senate what should be prioritized. She just wanted to offer suggestions based on the experienced problems in Bamban. Amid her suspension, Guo is asking for help from the senators so that the people of Bamban will not be neglected. Guo did not mention, though, if she would surrender to the Senate, but said she is hoping to be given a chance to defend herself in the proper forum. The suspended mayor is confident that Escudero, being a lawyer, understands the importance of the presumption of innocence. For his part, Escudero understands Guo's request, but he wants the mayor to come forward. Escudero added that the hearings on POGOs would continue.
Hanggat hindi siya nagpapakita at sumusunod sa Senado, ay hindi ko matatanggap ang anumang pakiusap na hinihiling niya dun sa kanyang liham. Sana payuhan siya ng tama ng kanyang mga abogado na humarap at tapusin na itong yugto na ito sa parte ng Senado para makafocus at concentrate na siya sa mga kasong kinakaharap niya.
Up next, we have reactions to the provisional agreement the Philippines and China just struck over the conduct of resupply missions in Ayungin Shoal. We sit down with the Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson, Commodore J. Tariela, after the break. Keep it here.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News. The United States has welcomed the decision of the Philippine government to engage in an agreement with China for peaceful and diplomatic negotiations regarding the issue on the West Philippine Sea. In a teleconference with the media, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Daniel Crittenbrink said they welcome the announcement and the diplomatic efforts to de-escalate tensions in the South China Sea. Crittenbrink went on saying that this is a matter of Philippine sovereignty. The Philippines has taken the lead on all issues related to the Second Thomas Shoal and has conducted diplomacy with China. Crittenbrink added that the U.S.'s role has been to continue supporting its Filipino allies, advocating for respect for international law, the peaceful resolution of disputes, and maintaining the status quo at Second Thomas Shoal, which has been in place since 1999. Crittenbrink's statement is in connection to the scheduled trip and meetings of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken with the countries of Laos, Japan, Singapore, Mongolia, and the Philippines. The aim of Blinken's trip is to strengthen security in the Indo-Pacific region.
Let's discuss the Philippines' agreement with China to ease tensions in the West Philippine Sea with Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela. He joins us live in the studio this evening. Good evening, Commodore. Thank you.
Good evening, Miss Pauline, Miss Gretchen, and Miss Shawn.
Yes. Okay, thanks for coming. I know it's been rainy outside, but I'm guessing water doesn't scare you very much. Before we get into the whole agreement that was announced last Sunday, the day before the third son of President Marcos, dun muna tayo sa reaction mo sa sinabi niya. Yung kanyang first standing ovation came after he said, basically a bunch of pronouncements on the West Philippine Sea. Hindi katang-isip ito, atin ito. Masaya ba kayo?
Well, I think, Ms. Shawn, it's not just the Filipino people were really happy about the pronouncement of the president. The Philippine Coast Guard and the entire Armed Forces of the Philippines, and of course, all agencies that comprise the National Task Force, West Philippine Sea, are really happy about the statement of the president. But I think another consolation on our part is that the president for the first time, because if you're going to look at the speeches of the president when he discussed about the West Philippine Sea, it is only basically has three main parts. The first one, we're not going to surrender a square inch of our territory, or we're not going to yield, or we're not going to waver. That has always been a part of the speech of the president. The second is, we're not going to be the reason of the tension. We are a peace-loving nation. So those kind of statements saying that we're not going to be the reason of the escalation. And then the third one is, we are peace-loving people. We want to settle the dispute peacefully. We can negotiate. So all of the speeches of the president are always mentioning those three parts. But for the State of the Nation address of the president during this time, he added two parts about the West Philippine Sea. The fourth part, I would say, is about the Transparency Initiative. He mentioned the importance of giving the right information to the Filipino people. As you know, since we started the Transparency Initiative, we have been mentioning that for us to be able to awaken the sense of patriotism of the Filipino people, you have to give them the right information. And this is the first time that the president has mentioned this. And then the last one is that he emphasized that our fight for the West Philippine Sea is not just limited for Marcos' legacy or for his administration until 2028. He mentioned in this State of the Nation address that our fight for the West Philippine Sea is for the next generation of Filipinos. And I think that's the most important part of the discussion of the president when it comes to the West Philippine Sea. Ordinary people can already relate that what we're fighting is actually for the future of our youth today.
Yes, I saw. Gretchen showed me a copy of your comic book that is meant to educate children, right?
Mga kwento ni Teacher June.
Teacher June, yes. So is that part of it? And do you think after the pronouncements of the president, which was kumbaga, mas maraming detalye than he usually says and medyo off script from his usual, do you think this will, kumbaga, give birth to a new set of marching orders?
Well, I wouldn't say that it would bring a new set of marching orders because, as I said, the Transparency Initiative, since General Eduardo Año chaired the National Task Force West Philippine Sea as our National Security Advisor, he has already embarked the NTF-WPS in exposing Chinese aggressive action. The Transparency Initiative that we have been doing has been extended to the media engagements that we're doing. Even Jonathan Malaya also support the campus caravan. We visit different universities to explain to the youth about our fight for the West Philippine Sea, why it matters to them, why is it important. So those kind of things. And I think our engagement with the civil society is also another approach that we are looking into for us to create more awareness and for everybody to be united in our fight in the West Philippine Sea.
But you know, a word that was also in that speech was quite contrary to the firmness of the president in not surrendering our territory. It was de-escalate. Can you put that into context for us? Was that a marching order from the president?
Was that policy? Can we take it to mean? Kasi correct us if we're wrong, no, Commodore, but he doesn't usually use the word de-escalation lightly, di ba?
But again, the word that he used, that we will de-escalate, is also falling on the second part of the usual speeches that he has been mentioning. That we're not going to increase the tension, that we are a peace-loving nation. That we are not going to be provoked. So this is just synonymous with that kind of line.
Although ito, sa panahon na ito, inuna niya yung word na de-escalate. Ayun, sabi niya, we continuously find ways to de-escalate tensions in contested areas without compromising our position and principles, before mentioning the other things that you mentioned. I mean, is that because of what happened recently? In June 17, is that the direction of the government now?
Well, I think it is an open book that the tension in the West Philippine Sea has tremendously increased in the past weeks. It's not just the Philippine government that recognized that the increasing tension in the West Philippine Sea. Even the United States and other allied countries has been mentioning that we need to do a lot of efforts for us to ease the tension in the West Philippine Sea. So probably you're correct. I think the president recognizes that as well.
All right, tell us what you can about this provisional arrangement between China and the Philippines. The DFA said that both countries have agreed on how to do RORE missions over at the Ayungin Shoal. But there seems to be confusion over the specifics, with the Philippines saying that this involves the resupply of daily necessities and rotation missions. At ang sabi naman ng China, this will be a humanitarian resupply of living necessities. So magkaiba yung bersyon ng Pilipinas at ng China. Has an agreement really been reached, to your knowledge?
You know, I would stand by with the statement of the Department of Foreign Affairs. I would support the pronouncement of the DFA that an agreement was reached. However, in those agreements that they have reached for us to ensure the continuous resupply and rotation operation, it is not prejudicial to our interests as in our position, the West Philippines.
Pero sabi ng China, magpapaalam. Sabi nila, inform China, they will conduct an on-site verification, and China will be monitoring.
But the DFA said no. So again, I would stand by with the statement of the Department of Foreign Affairs as part of the National Task Force West Philippine Sea, and also as part of this government.
Will the Philippine Coast Guard be part of the succeeding resupply missions?
You know, Gretch, the resupply operation is actually an Armed Forces of the Philippines operation. The only role of the Philippine Coast Guard, as I've always been emphasizing, is to support the resupply operation
So
of the Armed Forces.
will the PCG be part?
It still depends on the decision of the Department of National Defense and the Armed Forces of the Philippines, whether they're going to ask the Coast Guard to deploy our vessels.
Okay, so that's still up in the air. We'll take that. Okay.
Commodore, how does in light of this agreement, how does it affect the resupply missions? And meron po ba tayong mga security measures in place para matiyak natin yung safety pa rin ng mga Filipino troops natin?
Well, with regard to the arrangement that were already made by the DFA and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of China, those technical details hasn't been discussed yet on an operational level. So I don't have any details yet to disclose to the public with regard to the role of the Coast Guard and how are we going to do it on the ground.
So it will be a different policy this time. I mean, syempre nakasama na rin ako sa mga mission natin out in the West Philippine Sea. For this time, it won't be transparent. I mean, broadcasted.
I think there's a difference between broadcasting and transparency. Transparency is when we still choose to expose the aggressive action of China. The broadcasting, we've never done that. There's really no live broadcasting about the resupply operation. So again, there are still some details that we have yet to discuss among the members of the National Task Force West Philippine Sea.
Okay, I will take you out of the hot seat before you say something that you're not supposed to. But let me move on over still with the West Philippine Sea and the South China Sea issue, but not quite near the Ayungin Shoal. I know that the BRP Teresa Magbanua has been busy over at Escoda Shoal. It has been there for a while. What is your plan with regard to Ayungin? Is just one part of this giant body of water. What about the rest of Coast Guard operations? Can you tell us something about that? Has anything changed? We know that the monster, and we have heard you in your press briefings, you're saying that paikot-ikot sila doon, malapit sa Palawan, and our biggest Coast Guard ship has been there for a while. Is it still there? And what's the plan?
Well, with regard to Escoda Shoal, the Philippine Coast Guard vessel, BRP Teresa Magbanua 9701 remains to be there. This is the longest deployment of the Philippine Coast Guard vessel in the West Philippine Sea. With regard to the monster ship, the 5901 of the Chinese Coast Guard, since July 3, it's still there as well. It maintains a certain distance to the 9701, monitoring our activity in Escoda Shoal. As to their intention there, I can just speculate that probably they are there to, one, probably intimidate us, and then eventually for the Coast Guard vessel to go away. But, you know, they have been doing this for more than 14 days already, and we're still there. So we are also thinking that they are documenting the activity of the Philippine Coast Guard vessel. What are the things that we're doing there? But for the Philippine Coast Guard, we are, the Commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral Gavan, has given a very specific instruction to our personnel on board 9701 to have a radio challenge every hour for them to realize that it's the Philippines who have effective control in Sabina
So you
Shoal.
do that 24 times a day? Just a radio,
every hour.
like a PA announcement. Wow.
Well,
Since it docked there.
Yes.
Okay. Another player in the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea is Vietnam. We seldom talk about Vietnam, but they are coming up in the news because we have an upcoming joint exercise with them, the Vietnamese Coast Guard and the Philippine Coast Guard, this coming August 5 to 9. And this will be, correct me if I'm wrong, is this the first time that we will be having a joint exercise between the Coast Guards? And tell me how it is possible, despite overlapping claims with the extended continental shelf and the other activities of Vietnam, tell me how it is possible to have that kind of relationship with Vietnam and not have that with China. What's different with Vietnam?
Well, first of all, the Vietnamese Coast Guard and the Philippine Coast Guard, during the visit of President Bongbong Marcos in Vietnam last year, signed an agreement for the Coast Guard to cooperate with each other. It's a memorandum of understanding. This actually the triggering document for Vietnam Coast Guard to have a port visit here in Manila, and then eventually we're going to have a search and rescue exercise. If your question is, how is it possible for Vietnam to have this kind of maritime cooperation with the Philippines and China, is that we're having trouble? Despite of our issues in the West Philippine Sea.
What's the behavior of Vietnam out at sea?
You know, for Southeast Asian Coast Guard, not just for Vietnam, to include the Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency or Malaysian Coast Guard, we don't, we respect each other as a co-Coast Guard organization. We don't block, harass, we don't use water cannon, we don't use military-grade laser. So it's only the Chinese who's doing that against a Philippine Coast Guard vessel. So it's much easier for us to engage with Malaysian Coast Guard and Vietnam Coast Guard because we respect each other with regard to our respective occupied maritime feature. And they also, there are no incidents or reports that Filipino fishermen were harassed by the Vietnamese. And
Speaking of that, how are the fishermen right now? Have you received any reports? Apart from the recent events that we heard na may sumabog na barko, etc., have they been getting harassed by the Chinese?
Well, if our point of preference is the day that the Chinese Coast Guard implemented their new China Coast Guard regulation of detaining or arresting trespasser in their 9-dash line. Nobody has been reported yet until now that they were apprehended by the Chinese Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard vessels, although we have very limited number of assets, the Coast Guard leadership makes sure that it's strategically deployed in different parts of the West Philippines.
Bringing it to Vietnam, I mean, Vietnam, we are having a joint exercise with them, but apparently they also had a joint patrol with China back in April of 2024, the 8th of its kind. And nakita ko ang press release ng China doon, sabay-sabay namin pinoprotektahan yung dagat. I mean, what is the way forward here? Because yun nga, no, the command of the president is to de-escalate, and that is the direction we're taking. Do you think that's a possible way forward to have that kind of joint patrol with China? Is that possible? Have you talked about that? Because the other side, on the other end of it, is war. What are the possible solutions here that you see?
Well, you know, Gretch, that's the extreme other side is war. But on the other side of it is that it's a binary choice between China, whether they're going to be hostile against us, in which what they're doing, or they're going to be friendly. But they're choosing to be hostile towards the Philippine Coast Guard, towards the resupply operation, and towards the Filipino fishermen. But if you're going to ask, whether it's Filipino fishermen or whoever in the Philippine government, we would still choose to have a peaceful talk and coexistence with the Chinese. But that is something that has never been done. We go back in 2016 when, President Xi Jinping and President Duterte signed a memorandum of understanding allowing a joint Coast Guard committee meeting between Chinese Coast Guard and the Philippine Coast Guard. Every year, we sit down together, talk about different issues that is related to our functions, whether it's maritime law enforcement, maritime security, and maritime environmental protection. But in all those 6 years, from 2016 to 2022, Filipino fishermen still experience harassment. We're still having troubles in doing the resupply operation. We're still being shadowed by the Chinese Coast Guard. So we have already tried doing this kind of Coast Guard cooperation with China before.
So long story short, it doesn't really have the desired effect that we all hope that it would,
Yes.
basically. You also did just conclude a Coast Guard kind of co-training with the U.S. Coast Guard, right? How was that? Was it similar to the one with Vietnam? Or is that something you do every year as well?
Well, for the United States Coast Guard, as you know, we share the same Coast Guard mandates. So with regard to maritime safety, firefighting exercise, and even marine environmental protection. This is something that we always do with the U.S. Coast Guard, especially in maritime search and rescue.
Just wanted to go back, Commodore, to, of course, the Chinese ships in the West Philippine Sea. Ano na po ba ang latest doon? Nabawasan na po ba talaga yung mga Chinese ships? Can you tell us more about the movement in the area?
Well, with regard to the monitoring of the Chinese Coast Guard vessels, it remains to be fairly the same. No? When I say fairly the same, it's because in all those areas that we are identifying na they usually visit or they usually patrol, they are still there. For example, in Bajo de Masinloc, although we would say that there is a decrease of number of Chinese Coast Guard vessels, from 4 it becomes 2, and then in Ayungin Shoal or in Escoda Shoal, all those areas remains to have China Coast Guard presence.
Okay. Well, we also had bilateral consultation mechanisms, the dialogues between Chinese officials and ours here in the Philippines earlier this month of July. And of course, that all kind of climaxed with the announcement of the agreement, quote unquote, just last Sunday. Do you think that is a direct result of the bilateral dialogues?
Well, I hope, and I'm very optimistic that this kind of peaceful negotiation and coming up with this kind of arrangement that would allow us to carry out a peaceful resupply operation is a product of that bilateral consultative mechanism. But again, I'm still hopeful, but I'm expecting less of the realization of all those promises.
Commodore, di ko palalagpasin yung pagkakataon na tanungin kayo tungkol dun sa isa sa mga hot topic na you responded to on social media. It came out here on the big story. There were some people criticizing the transparency initiative being pushed by the Philippine Coast Guard. Of course, meron din mga nag-defend that we earned a lot of support from the international community, militarily, diplomatically, investments, because of that transparency initiative. The criticism was that this is not supposed to be a strategy, that it is just a tactic. But taking a look at the stance of the government and where it's going, at yung sona ng Pangulo kahapon, ano sa tingin po ninyo ang urgent na magawa in the next three years heading out, because we know pag nagpalit ng administration, maaring magbago rin ang ihip ng hangin. Your thoughts first on the transparency initiative, criticism, and what is the most urgent that we need to do in the upcoming years?
Well, Gretchen, I think the question if transparency initiative is effective in addressing Chinese aggression is a wrong question. Because I said from the very beginning, the objective of the Transparency Initiative is not about addressing China directly. The objective of the Transparency Initiative is basically divided into 2 parts. The first one is to make sure that the Filipino people are aware of what's happening. So, President Bongbong Marcos inherited the nation that is divided about their understanding in the West Philippine Sea. Right? And most of the misinformation, fake news, has proliferated in the social media. That's why ordinary people just have a very limited information about the West Philippine Sea. So the first objective of Transparency Initiative is to make sure that we're going to unite the Filipino people with all of us understanding what are we fighting for. And I can fairly say right now that for more than a year now, as a result of the survey that was conducted a lot of times last January, second quarter, it showed that majority of the Filipinos are aware of what's happening in the West Philippine Sea and why it is important for our country to stand up against the bullying activities of China. And the second objective of the Transparency Initiative is to get the support of the international community. You cannot ask other countries to support you if they do not know what's happening in the West Philippine Sea. That's why we had the Transparency Initiative, to show the world that China is the unlawful actor who doesn't hesitate to violate the international law, who disregard UNCLOS, and who keeps on violating our sovereign rights and sovereignty. And that second objective, we have also attained that with the deepening security arrangement with other countries and their support for the modernization of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and even the capability building of the Philippine Coast Guard. So those two objectives were met. So if you're going to ask me, is Transparency Initiative successful in attaining its objective? Yes. But you have to ask the right question for you to have...
What is the right question?
The right question is the Transparency Initiative effective in attaining its objectives?
Okay. On that note, we have to end this interview randomly with a question instead of an answer. But that is a very good question. Like you said, Commodore, hope for the best, expect the worst, always be on our toes. I'm guessing that's words that you Coast Guard live by, Coast Guard officials live by. But thank you so much for making your way here on such a rainy Tuesday night. PCG spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela. We'll be taking a quick break for now. Right after that, after President Marcos trumpeted his government's gains in the State of the Nation address, Vice President Sara Duterte comes up with her own list of accomplishments. We have that list when we return. Keep it here.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News.
Authorities have resorted to forensic analysis to prove that the man seen using supposedly illegal drugs in a now viral video is in fact not President Bongbong Marcos. Elaine Fulgencio with the full report.
Authorities are now investigating the malicious video supposedly showing President Bongbong Marcos using illegal drugs. The video made rounds online yesterday before the president gave his third State of the Nation address. Authorities insist that the video is fabricated and the person on the video is not President Marcos.
This picture is definitely not the same. So this feature of the pina of the ear is what we observed for photographed images of a person that is being at the side. So we can see that this is unique to the president, to this side, and it is unique to this man on to this side.
Whether this is an AI or an actual person, but the fact is this is the video that is being circulated, and definitely he is not the president.
Before this, Cabinet Secretaries already came to the President's defense. Defense Chief Gibo Chodor dismissed the video as a destabilization attempt at the Marcos government. Interior Secretary Benher Abalos also insisted that the video is fake and urged the public to be more vigilant against similar practices.
Hindi pa ho kami nag-uusap tungkol dito, Pero as a final word, ito lang ho masasabi ko sa ating mga kababayan, na parati kayong maging mapanuri. Hindi porke ito'y sinasabi na isang vlogger o sinasabi na maimpluwensyang tao ay basta na lang tayong maniniwala. Maging mapanuri, marami pong fake news na lumalabas ngayon.
Authorities say they already have an idea on who is behind the fake video and are now preparing to file the appropriate charges against the suspects.
We have identified mga tao, no? But we are still gathering enough evidence. Akala nila ang Pilipino ay maliit lang ang utak.
This is not the first time that the deepfake of President Bongbong Marcos made rounds online. A few months ago, there was also a fake audio recording of President Marcos supposedly ordering a military attack on China. Reporting for News 5, Elaine Fulgencio, We Are One News.
Well, Vice President Sara Duterte comes up with her own list of accomplishments a day after President Bongbong Marcos presented his. On her office's Facebook page, the VP went by the numbers and trumpeted programs that helped over 3 million people. These include programs that provide burial, medical, and educational assistance, and initiatives that support livelihood, nutrition, and other basic needs. Hours after that Facebook post, the OVP came out with a statement. Here, Vice President Duterte says that the chief of the PNP has ordered the relief of all 75 police and security personnel assigned to protect her. VP Sara says the order will not affect her work, but expresses hope that with the move, there will be, quote, less cries from the people regarding the proliferation of drugs in the country, and that even fewer shall fall victim to various criminal activities. PNP Chief Romel Marbil confirmed this, saying they need the personnel to bolster the police force in the National Capital Region. Marbil added that the security of the Vice President under the jurisdiction of the Presidential Security Command. The Vice President skipped the sauna yesterday and admitted to not watching it. She reasoned she had to pay her last respects to a local government official.
On now to the Paris 2024 Olympics. The spirit of the Philippines shines bright as our athletes have arrived at the Olympic Village, ready to make history at Paris 2024. First to arrive are Filipino gymnasts Emma Malabuyo, Kaloyulo, and Alea Finnegan, who were able to tour around the Olympic Athletes Village. While they are in the village, Yulo, Malabuyo, and Finnegan will continue their preparations as the gymnastics event will begin on August 2. Just 2 days after the Philippine boxing team arrived in the Olympic Village. Settling in their rooms are Hergy Bacyadan, Yumir Marshal, Ira Villegas, and Nesty Petesio. First up among the boxers will be Marshal, who will begin his campaign at the round of 32 of the men's light heavyweight division at
Friday, or actually technically it might already be Saturday, no? Kasi past 12 midnight sa Pilipinas. Labas muna tayo ng France because Marikina residents are in for a treat after its local officials partnered with healthcare firms like MWell to bring teleconsult booths and mobile clinics into the city. Mobile journalist Evan Tarinque reports.
Ayon sa kasabihan, health is wealth. Buti na lang sa pamamagitan ng telemed pod na ito, one call away na lang si Doc.
In partnership with Congresswoman Stella and Congressman Miro Kimbo, MWell and PLDT presents the Teleconsult booth. Now, doctors are just one call away for your consultation needs. The booths are free to use and have already helped over 1,000 Marikina residents.
We try to augment their on-site doctors. Sinasabayan namin ang teleconsultation yon. So can you imagine, mas mabilis talaga yung takbo ng pasyente.
Each barangay has 5 assigned medical volunteers. They're on call 24/7. So if you need a consultation, they can reach you quickly.
Kami po yung pupunta sa kanila para sila po ay i-check up through online. Pwede po namin silang i-connect sa online doctors para makonsulta po sila.
Currently, there is only one teleconsult booth available for free in Marikina with an average consultation time of just 15 minutes. Not only that, MWell, One Life, Congresswoman Stella Kimbo, and Congressman Miro Kimbo have also partnered to bring you Clinic on Wheels. It is a free mobile hospital providing checkups and medications.
Kita talaga namin na kailangan talaga. Hindi pwede talagang sabihin sa ating mga kababayan na, guys, sorry, hanggang alasin ko lang. Kasi talaga ang pangangailangan sa kanasuran is 24/7.
Sabi nga nila, mahal magkasakit. Kaya kung makakalibre ang medical consultation gaya nito, abay, samantalangin nyo na. Mobile Junior, Ivan Taringki po hatid ang mukha ng balita.
Swerte naman ng mga taga Marikina. Free healthcare, di ba? Now we're talking about the PhilHealth Mass. It's nice to know that there are other things that you can
Pero
turn
medyo
to.
problemado sila ngayon dahil malakas ang ulan. Ang daming iisipin, ano? I hope everybody's safe at home tonight.
Safe and dry, ang daming mga nahuhulog na mga poste. Ang daming walang kuryente, ang mga nahulog na puno. So,
kanina dito medyo nawalan natin ng
meron dyan
kuryente,
sa...
pati ng internet.
Yes, around the corner. May
But
nahulog na poste.
one thing that is surprising me that we are at letter C in terms of yung mga pangalan ng mga bagyo. And mag-August na.
Yes.
So medyo na-delay talaga dahil siguro nga sa El Nino.
Sa global warming, di ba? Pero dasal lang tayo, na hindi gumrabe pala.
Yes.
Yung
Because after the El Nino,
usually there's a La Nina.
Yun naman ang papasok.
For usual, September pa ata ay talaga yung
peak La Nina.
Peak of La Nina. That's right.
Okay, that's just less than 2 months away, but that's it from the three of us tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in and have a good night.